and gentlemen, please welcome our very own Milka Zepina to the stage.
Thank you, everybody. Ви можете чути? Okay. As I thought of my speech today, two words kept coming to my mind: love and freedom. We Croatians know all of these meanings because we have lived both. Simply said, love equals freedom for justice and freedom for Croatia and Croatian generals. Everything we do is for the love of a nation and freedom of its people. These two simple words are always taken for granted. Only when both are lost are they cherished. Through centuries, the Croatians have lost both the freedom of their loved homeland, but never did they lose the love and the dream of freedom and their identity, their God's gift, their Croatia. As I stand before you, I am saddened to be here as each and every one of you should be. My heart aches and the fear runs through my veins. The fear of what could be and what might happen if we again lose the love and the freedom of our beauty on the Adriatic. The first time I remember protesting in the streets of New York with the signs and banners stating, "Free our Croatian intellectuals. Freedom or death." Yes, that was 1971. We begged the free Western nations to help the enslaved Croatia. But it will be another 20 years and the fall of the Berlin Wall when a voice from one of those imprisoned intellectuals, Dr. Franjo Tuđman, said it is time, it is now or never. Croatians worldwide showed support and went into action to remove the chains of slavery from our homeland. Unanimously, the Croatians voted for freedom. Yes, but freedom was short-lived in the Pearl of the Adriatic, a nation in the heart of Europe. As the pro-Serbian Red Army tanks rolled into Croatia, the world turned their backs. The world did not want to know if it was not in their backyard and of no relevance to them. Massacres, bombings, and burnings continued as the world closed their eyes and ears. It was not of interest to them. Yes, it was now 1991. We stood in the same place and pleaded for the world to open their eyes and to help our nation and our people. But why would they help us? Small, unknown nation, when the so-called green light was given to Slobodan Milošević, who ran the third largest army in Europe, to put the Croats in their place. He was given a week to shut them up, but they were mistaken. They did not know what love for freedom these people have. 6 months too late, this message of green light was announced by Secretary of State James Baker. Instead, the United States firmly told Milošević that they will always choose democracy rather than unity. In 1971, it was the Croatian Spring, and then in 1991, it was the Croatian awakening to the call of freedom and independence. As the arms embargo was put in place to protect their homeland and newly found freedom, their cries and with rosaries around their necks, their prayer for help was answered, and that help came from abroad and within. Yes, it was 20 years ago that we, the New York Croatian Americans, held weeks-long vigils and listened to the news of war engulfed and ravaged Croatia. At times, our hope was slim, but we held on to that thin thread that help would come. Someone would hear our nation's cry for help. We held on to that hope, for we had our nation in the heart and prayer of our beloved Pope John Paul II. As the Yugoslav army ravaged our homeland, 1/3 of our territory fell into the Serbian butchers' hands. Our people were massacred, murdered, and displaced. Still, the world kept their eyes closed. We pleaded with the United Nations, and finally, they could not keep them closed much longer. It was with the aid of President Clinton and his cabinet that the UN sent peacekeepers known as UNPROFOR, and they designated areas under their protection to demilitarize and ensure human rights. The Yugoslav army was to withdraw from all parts of Croatia. The UNPROFOR, in collaboration with the UN humanitarian organizations, would ensure the safe and peaceful return of the displaced persons in the protected areas. The Serbian butchers would not allow this to happen, and for 4 long years, from 1991 to 1995, Milosevic's insurgents destroyed our country, but not our spirit. There were many brokered peace talks. Nothing would stop this butcher of the Balkans. However, today, the United Nations claims it was not safe nor a peaceful return. After doing a lot of research on the actions or non-actions of the ICTY, it seems that instead of trying our generals, the problems lay within the United Nations. It has been brought to our attention that the UN investigators' strategy was selective use of information, evidence, and guidance, which ICTY took from leading nations and intelligence agencies. The evidence that could exonerate the defendant or testimony from witnesses, the investigators sometimes ignored and was never presented in The Hague. So we must ask ourselves, how fair and just is this criminal tribunal? President Clinton wrote in his memoir that he believed the Serbs could only be brought to the negotiation table if they sustained major losses on the ground. Former U.S. peace negotiator Richard Holbrooke said he realized how much the Croatian offensive in the Krajina profoundly changed the nature of the Balkan game, and thus this diplomatic offensive. German Foreign Minister Klaus Kinkel released a statement expressing regret about the offensive, but added, "We can't forget that the years of Serb aggression have sorely tried Croatia's patience." The Operation Storm was put in place not only to liberate the occupied Croatian territories. The U.S. government said the military operation had been provoked initially by a Krajina Serb attack on the Muslim enclave of Bihać. Operation Storm took place from August 4 to August 8, 1995, 84 hours to gain back its territory with limited casualties on both sides. The 3 generals involved in this operation were Ante Gotovina, Mladen Markac, and Ivan Čermak. The latter was freed of all charges, and the first 2 were sentenced to 24 and 18 years imprisonment for an operation approved and aided by the world leaders. The misinterpretation of one sentence from the meeting at the Brijuni was a statement made by President Tudjman. Blows that will make the Serbs all but disappear. That statement has convicted our generals of war crimes. Before the beginning of the operation, both sides were present at peace talks in Switzerland on August 3, 1995. Croatia's demand for the Croatian Serb rebels to reintegrate into Croatia was refused, even though they knew that military action was expected. In a special proclamation, the President of Croatia, Franjo Tudjman, called for the Serb population, which had not taken part in the war, to remain in their homes and promised them that their rights would be protected. Croatian army representatives also declared that they would leave corridors open for civilians wishing to leave to Bosnia. At 3 a.m. on August 4th, warning was sent that the operation would start 2 hours later, when 150,000 Croatian army troops covered 300-kilometer front. By this time, much of the Croatian Serb leadership had already left for Serbia or Bosnia. Large refugee columns were formed in many parts of Croatian Serb territory, so virtually the entire Serb population safely passed into Bosnia. The International Criminal Tribunal for former Yugoslavia indicted 3 generals, Ante Gotovina, Mladen Markac, and Ivan Čermak, on charges of allegedly operating a joint criminal enterprise for the purpose of permanently removing the Serb population from the Krajina by force and of crimes against humanity. The Croatian government maintained the operation was justified on the grounds that the sovereign state has a right to be in control of its own territory. Ladies and gentlemen, I ask you, what would you do if you were kept captive in your home for 4 years? What length would you go to get your freedom from your captors? For 4 years, our nation tried every avenue, and there was no exit. They had no choice. They did what you and I and every citizen of this country would do, and for that, they are harshly sentenced to imprisonment. Again, we go back to those 2 simple words, love and freedom. These 2 generals lost their freedom because of their love for liberty in their homeland. When you protect your homeland with your heart and soul, then you cannot be a war criminal. How is it that a freedom-fighting small country in the middle of civilized Europe is accused of war crimes when all it did was free its war-ravaged territories from an external aggressor? We ask, would the same law apply to the great world powers? No, it would not.
I mean, I don't care as long as it doesn't.
Because we did not see one British. We did not see one British soldier brought to justice for the attack on the Northern Irish territory, causing death to civilians. Did anyone in Spain go in front of the World Court for attacks on the soldiers from Basque and killing of civilians in that territory? Did any of the Dutch peacekeeping commanders go in front of a tribunal for allowing the brutal murders of 8,000 civilians in Srebrenica? No, never. I ask all of you here, we will always be destined to be freedom fighters? Do we have a right to our nation? Do we have a right to live in peace in our homeland? The only conclusion we can make from this is that the green light given to Milosevic to put the Croatians in their place still has a sliver of hope. It is their hope to break us and our freedom-loving spirit at whatever cost and take away the 1,000-year yearning for freedom. They want us to be ashamed of our heroes, our generals, and our nation. But we stand here to prove them wrong. We stand tall and proud. We stand behind our generals, not 100%, but 1,000%, because all they did was free our homeland from the aggressor and the butcher of the Balkans. We had the blessing of the highest power on earth, Pope John Paul II, who also met and received General Ante Gotovina and blessed them. Who do we believe then? Is it the ICTY or beautified Pope John Paul II? We all know the answer. Croatia has been blessed by Pope John Paul II 3 times since the independence. This weekend, Pope Benedict visited and blessed our homeland. It is now up to all of us here to keep our homeland and our generals in our prayers and blessings. We are here today for the love of freedom. General Ante Gotovina and General Mladen Markac, we want you to know we love you and we stand behind you. Your fight for freedom and support, your effort on making what is wrong right. 2 simple words, love, freedom equals Croatia. Stand proud, stand tall, Croatian generals. As Croatians around the world, stand tall with you. God bless you.